Hello! Welcome back. It's podcast number 9, here once again with Natalie.
Hi!
Let's dive right into it. After all the rotating we've done, it's time once again to begin the podcast with a companion scene. Act 1, Scene 9. The companions, having been forced to bypass Silvery Moon, are passing through the Evermoors, a deadly swampland also known as the Troll Moors. As they enter the moors, full of fear of what they might find, Caddy Bree sings a song to calm their nerves. No melody came to mind for this one, but it starts off in a 60s surfer rock style, then a reprise of We Got This, and then Caddy Bree sings an incredibly long verse which consists entirely of snippets from various songs sung by Disney princesses. I'm kind of proud of that verse. Then they fight trolls. They flee from the trolls. There's another surf verse. It's not a scene that lends itself easily to being described. You're gonna have to watch it, maybe, I don't know, give me money so I can hire someone to finish the music, and then give me more money so I can actually produce the thing. Anyway, they escape from the moors and have another triumphant reprise of We Got This, and there's more jokes, and whatever, next segment. Team Salmon!
Salmon!
That's right, doing things a bit out of order. Instead of revisiting Iris, we're going to revisit our pack, because Natty, Stacy, and Kenzie are all working on drawings of the main cast of Iris, and I wanted to give them until next week to finish it, so look forward to that. 3 sets of Iris art.
Yep.
So for now, I'm going to redisplay those photos of the pets who inspired the characters of our pack, and muse about the voice actors I'd like to see playing the roles. Once again, I'll come up with a cast, both for if it's a big budget production and if it's a more local thing. In the role of Sawyer, the curmudgeonly spaniel who leads the pack, I would cast John Manfrolotti, a stand-up comedian best known for appearing in Everybody Loves Raymond. I tried to get him, even if this was a more local production, because there's a strong connection in my mind between this character and this actor. As Sasha, Sawyer's rambunctious cat partner, I would cast Mark Hamill. Y'all know who he is. You might not know that between Star Wars trilogies, he became a legendary voice actor. Alternatively, I would cast Jules King, a local costume designer who was the first person to take a real interest in Dritz and the Companions of the Dance Hall, so he kind of got in on the ground floor of TAPAS. As Rufus, the big dumb Doberman, I would cast Jim Cummings, sort of a household name if your household is really into cartoons. For the lower budget version, I would cast myself. As Billy, the very cat-like black cat, first choice is Troy Baker, a very prolific anime and video game actor. Otherwise, I'm going to go with John Steinkamp, a local graphic designer and guy who performed in the most recent play I performed in, Mark Twain's Is He Dead? I made a big splash in that one. As Boo Boo, the big aggressive mutt, I go with the sinister pipes of Gwendoline Yeo. Otherwise, I'd cast Kelsey Pig, John's wife, a former Quincy Community Theater employee who I've known for a while and was a fellow cast member in Is He Dead? And as Sebastian, the meek and quiet youngest member of the pack, my first choice is Haley Joel Osment. He should do more voice work. He has a very good anime voice. For the local version, I would go with Zivan Christ, a very talented young actor who was a main cast member in She Loves Me, which I was an extra in. I don't have a picture of Zivan. He doesn't appear to have a Facebook. He's somewhere in this cast photo. And there are 2 other main cast members of our pack I'd like to talk about, accompanied by stock images of their species I found on Google. One is Clover, a hermit crab who runs a shop in a secret village. He supplies the pack with their supplies and gives them knowledge about the world and their journeys in the Secret Order, and has a particularly vitriolic relationship with Sawyer. I would cast Vic Mignogna in that role in both versions. He comes up a lot in my fantasy casts. Damn good actor. The other is Wasp, a yellow jacket whom the pack encounter injured in the streets. Sebastian heals him and grants him an extended lifespan, and he becomes their ally and eye in the sky. In that role, in both versions, I would cast Bill Corbett, best known as a cast member on Mystery Science Theater during the Sci-Fi Channel era. All the MST3K cast members from that era appear a lot in my fantasy casts, Bill more often than others. I guess I'll make a meme out of this one as well. Maybe once I get some art of these characters, which I'm in no hurry to do because, again, not one of the projects I'm more passionate about. I can wait for the next cycle. And okay, we breezed through those two segments. Now for the long ones. We're going to talk about the first book in what is sort of, at least in my opinion, the second tier of the Secrets of Droon's narrative, Book 9, The Tower of the Elf King, the first volume in a while to be illustrated by David Merle, and the first altogether to have Merle on cover art. Let's just jump right into this one. Chapter 1, Dream Pictures. The book opens at a pool party at Neil's place. Eric and Julie aren't able to get into it as they both had dreams about scary facial features. Eric's had 3 red eyes, while Julie's had a toothy, fire-spitting maw. Neil realizes he dreamed of a nose, and illustrates it by stacking up some cookies, saying it was a runny pig snout with 3 nostrils. With the signs being obvious that it's time to return to Droon, the kids take off, and hey, Neil's dad has a line. I didn't realize that. I thought he didn't properly debut until much later. Okay, make a note to talk about him in this episode. The kids go back to Eric's, take the magic stairs to Droon, and find themselves falling into a boiling cauldron. Chapter 2, The Ceremony of Truth. Kia catches the trio before they land in the boiling cauldron, and she explains that she and Galen are working on a magic spell called the Ceremony of Truth to find out what happened to Spar, who has been missing for nearly a month now. The Ceremony of Truth, as it turns out, involves flinging a bunch of spaghetti at a huge painted target held up by Max. The spaghetti forms itself into the shape of Spar's face, but it's unclear exactly what Galen divines from this. He explains that with Spar gone, the Nins have been migrating out of the Darklands. The kids show Galen their pictures, and he claims he's never seen anything like it. Right at that moment, Khan appears, crying out that the lumpy village has been robbed by a 3-eyed monster. Chapter 3, The Plundered Village. A distraught Khan reveals that the monster stole all the valuables in the village, including his crown. The kids go off to help Khan track the monster down. Kia uses a newly discovered power of the magic harp to teleport them straight to Lumpland. After some investigation of the scene of the crime, Julie finds a green scale from the monster's skin, which Khan uses to sniff out the monster's trail. That night, they make camp. Eric goes off to scout around and discovers a huge encampment of Nins. Chapter 4, In the Company of Nins. Eric takes a tumble down the hill and ends up in the company of a Nin woman and her toddler. The woman explains that Spar is gone, and they now follow Grindel, who Eric guesses to be the monster they're tracking. Under Grindel's orders, the Nins are building a tower. With Spar gone and Grindel being a worse boss, the woman explains, the Nins are unhappy. I really like this moment, how it humanizes the Nins. The Nins are basically the orcs of Droon. How many fantasy stories bother to make their orcs sympathetic like that? Pretty progressive fantasy world building for a kid's book written in 2000. The Nin hides Eric when her warrior husband enters the tent. They argue in their native language for a bit until the woman makes him go away by saying a single word, Thalak. She sends Eric on his way with a bag of meatballs, and he rejoins the others and updates them on what he's learned. Chapter 5, Voice of Thunder. As they track Grindel, the monster himself ambushes them. He's a 7-foot-tall, Godzilla-looking dude with a thunderous voice who has the eyes and mouth from Eric and Julie's drawings, but not the pig nose from Neil's dream. Grindel identifies himself as King of the Elves, much to everyone's confusion, and summons his minions, 6 3-foot-tall hooded figures bearing sacks of treasure and wielding palm leaves as weapons. There's a skirmish, during which Grindel and the elves try to take not only valuables like Kia's harp, but also anything shiny such as their canteens. During the fight, Julie knocks off Grindel's tail, which he takes with him as he retreats, and Neil manages to get back one of the sacks of treasure, which just contains spoons. Grindel's retreat is triggered by the arrival of a car containing a green-haired man called Friddle, who offers to give Khan and the kids a ride to the Tower of the Elf King, where they will find Grindel and their treasure. Sorry, I misspoke. Friddle has green hair, not green eyes. Or maybe he has green eyes, too. I don't know. Chapter 6, The Story on the Stones. As they travel, Friddle explains that he is an inventor who's been tracking Grindel ever since he appeared at around the same time Spar disappeared and started stealing shiny things. He explains there are 27 varieties of elf in Droon, none of which can account for Grindel's monstrous appearance. Then Kia's harp begins to communicate with Friddle. He recognizes the harp as his own creation, and Kia as young Princess Kiki. He explains that the harp contains 12 story stones, which were blank when he set them into the harp, but now tell the story of Queen Relna's life. The castle where she was born, the cottage where she raised Kia, the dark fortress where she battled Spar. Then, near the end, a white falcon, a blue dragon, and the queen's current form, a red tiger. The last 2 story stones are still blank. Then they come upon the tower, a sloppily cobbled-together mess of metal slabs which extends above the clouds. Chapter 7, Nins with Hammers. Friddle distracts the Nins while Khan and the kids ascend the stairs to the very tippy-top of the tower where they're sure they'll find Grindel and the missing treasure. Sure enough, the monster is up there waiting, and as they enter the room he goes, "What? You scared me!" And Eric's like, "We scared you?" Chapter 8, King of the Hog Elves. Grindel attempts to attack, but he ends up falling apart. It turns out the monster was just a costume worn by a tiny hog elf, a 3-foot-tall being with a pig nose. Grindel explains that he wore the monster costume to intimidate the Nins into obeying him. He explains that he and his companions were imprisoned by Spar to work in a mine, but when Spar disappeared, they were freed. They want to return to their homeland of Morka, and to do that, they need to ride the Soar Wings, 2 giant birds who live in Morka but circle Droon once a year, flying above the clouds and stopping only for shiny things, hence the tower and the theft of all the treasure. Soon the Soar Wings arrive. Grindel summons his 6 fellow hog elves to go out the tower's roof and ride upon the Soar Wings' backs, but an army of Nins clambers in. Chapter 9, The Magic Word. The Nins, discovering that their employer is nothing but a tiny hog elf, turn on him. Grindel flees out the tower window to go up to the roof, and the Nins brandish their swords at the kids who, as I mentioned a few books ago, fight the Nins off using their spoons and meatballs. Of all the things you could have had the kids acquire earlier in the book so they could fight Nins in this moment, you went with spoons and meatballs. I don't get it. Well, once they run out of meatballs, Eric decides to try using the word the Nin woman used, Thalak. Confused, the Nin warriors leave. The kids and Khan go up to the tower roof, only to find the Nins down below are tearing the tower apart. Chapter 10, A Wizard's Journey. Grindel and his companions leap aboard one of the Soar Wings, which begins to fly back to Morka. Kia hops atop the other Soar Wing, pursuing Grindel because at some earlier point he'd offhandedly mentioned that he knows where the red tiger is. Friddle comes to rescue Khan and the Upper World trio in a hot air balloon. Friddle tells them that Thalak means something akin to "I'll pinch your cheeks if you don't go away." Bittersweetly, they watch Kia disappear into the distance on her Soar Wing as the rainbow stairs reappear out in the desert, and the kids return home. So a review. I'm still bad at this part. All in all, a decent start to a new story arc in the Droon saga. Grindel was a character who really stuck with me as a kid. And fleshing out the Nins after all this time was a very nice touch. Introduced us to Friddle, another favorite of mine, and giving some good screen time to Khan. That adds up to a lot of my favorite characters in the series being in this one book, so that's cool. So this episode introduces 3 guest stars, or so I thought. As I mentioned, I missed the first time around that Neil's dad gets a line in this book, so that qualifies him for getting himself cast in the episode. You'll recall that when casting Neil, I said I wanted a young Macaulay Culkin type, so I would cast Macaulay Culkin as Neil's dad. And I just realized that's exactly what I did with Eric and his dad. Oh well. The first of these 3 guest characters to debut is the one-shot, nameless Nin housewife. For her role in humanizing the Nins, I think she merits a guest star, and I would cast Conchata Ferrell. Her husband would be one of the usual Nin performers, and her kid... I hope we can put a toddler in Nin makeup without it being a huge ordeal. Wouldn't want to make a kid super uncomfortable just for some silly TV show. The second character to appear is Grindel, first seen in his magical monster disguise. For the voice of Monster Grindel, let's go with Clancy Brown. Given his aforementioned resemblance to Godzilla, I think him being played by a big rubber suit performer would be very appropriate. And since Spar is not in this episode, and Grindel greatly resembles the best-known rubber suit performer there is, I think I would want to cast myself as Grindel's suit performer, just to see what being a suit performer is like. I hear it's horrible, but what kind of man would I be if I didn't try new things? Grindel's elves should be depicted by little people hidden in cloaks. We'll talk about the unmasked hog elves in a moment, as chronologically Friddle appears first. At this point, I was feeling like the Droon books, like most media that's more than a decade old, contained something of an overabundance of white people. Fortunately, even before that occurred to me, the actor I had in mind to play Friddle was Asif Mandvi. The way Friddle gets so excited about things, particularly in another of my very favorite books in the series, just really reminded me of this actor in particular, for some reason. Finally, hog elves. I'd say that instead of being puppets like Khan or Batamogi, it would make sense for them to be suit performed by little people, not unlike, say, Hoggle from Labyrinth. And for Grindel's real voice, the monster voice being a fake voice, I would like to cast Gilbert Gottfried. The other hog elves should, of course, be voiced by their performers. The Soarwings, they must be a truly majestic spectacle, and I think to do that, they'd have to be some kind of practical effect to really, really get the impact of them. These massive four-winged birds, some truly brilliant puppetry will have to go into these amazing beasts. My final thought on the adaptation is that even though Spar kind of disappears from the series for a little while at this point, I still want his actor, me, to be in the theme song. I think all 7 main characters should remain in the theme song, even in the story arcs where Spar and Galen and Eric don't appear as often. Okay, before we move on to the final segment, I need a bathroom break. BRB. I'm back, and finally we come upon Melody Time, a 1948 compilation film that I didn't know the first thing about going in. Looking at the DVD, it seems I'd heard of some of the segments before, but never actually seen any of them.
I have seen one of them.
Which one?
Once Upon a Winter Time.
Okay. Okay, so you, like all the previous films and many future ones, this one starts with the title song over the credits. Did you have any notes that were just about the opening credits?
It's cheerful intro song, but very, very calm.
Mm-hmm.
Fit into like a simple melody.
Yeah.
And also I like when they have the credits in the beginning, becomes less annoying in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you can't do that with modern movies because so many people work on movies these days. If you put all the credits in the beginning, people would get very bored.
That's sad.
Mm-hmm.
We can reinstate it when we start on like our stuff.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. If we do a feature, we could put some opening credits in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I see you noted that the movie starts with a book opening, like a lot of the fairy tale stories do.
Yeah.
It's sort of
I really like it.
Yeah, I think the conceit is that it's a book of sheet music. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, the first segment is Once Upon a Winter Time, a love story centered around ice skating. Natty?
I actually saw this way before at Christmas '99. They had it broadcasted at the local TV channel.
Nice.
And my mom just pushed record on, like, there were this tape in the video recorder. She planned it actually for like some years then later the day, but then she felt, well, who knows, this is gonna be handy. Yeah. And we have it recorded and everything, and it's probably worth lots of money today because it's one of the few Melody Time segments that actually been dubbed into Swedish.
I see.
Yeah, it's a rarity. There's nowhere to find it today.
Wow.
So, yeah, the videotape is probably worth millions today.
Yeah, I don't know about millions, but yeah, you try.
Which year is actually Melody Time from? Like 48?
48, yeah.
I rest my case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that segment, you might want to auction off that tape sometime.
Yeah, but it's a old favorite for me. I loved it. My younger sister didn't. She said it was cheesy. I don't care about that. But yeah, it's about a small, cute couple who goes ice skating in the winter.
Yeah. The only idea I took away from it, I'm primarily watching these to get Keys and Kingdoms ideas, but
Yeah.
one I took away from it was, horse-drawn sleds for wintertime travel. I
Yeah.
suppose, they could have the exact same stats as a cart or wagon or something, but...
Yeah, also it seems like the horses are more intelligent than you would expect because, yeah, the ice cracks, the girl is drifting towards a waterfall. The horses actually saves her.
Oh, yeah.
But cute to, yeah, she doesn't remember any for that because she was passed out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the heroes in this segment was obviously the horses.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Alright, the second segment is Bumble Boogie, a jazzed up version of the classical piece Flight of the Bumblebee, I think.
Yeah.
About a bee trying to escape a musical nightmare. Over to you.
Yes. Hang on.
Now, there's an update thing on her computer blocking her notes. There you
Yeah.
go.
It's about this bumblebee. It seems like it just wants a place to rest. But everything around him appears as fusion of objects and music instruments. Like flowers had like these piano tiles and stuff.
Yeah, and there's this piano
The-
caterpillar that chases it.
Yeah, the music in the background sounds like a full orchestra, but it's mostly piano and trumpets.
Yeah, it's sort of a, yeah, like I said, sort of a combination of orchestral classical music and some jazz in there.
I like jazz.
Yeah. That it?
Yep.
Okay. So then came the Legend of Johnny Appleseed.
I have actually seen this before.
Okay, yeah.
I don't exactly remember when, but
Okay.
I saw it.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first American stories I learned about.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those folk heroes. They compare him in the beginning to Paul Bunyan, John Henry, Davy Crockett.
Oh, John Henry. I remember that.
You remember that short film that we saw once?
Oh, yeah. I do.
Yeah, more modern short film on a Disney short film collection. That was a good one, yeah. I remember singing Johnny Appleseed's song at daycare before every snack time. Oh, the Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need, the sun and the rain and an apple seed. Oh, he's been good to me.
Great.
And, as in The Whale Who Wanted to Sing at the Met, one person did all the voices in the segment. Natty, your notes?
Oh yeah, as I said, it's one of the first American stories I learned about, and it's telling about all settlers in Indiana and Ohio. Those are like states,
Yeah.
And there's this simple man with his apple trees. He plants the seeds, he tends to the trees, picks the apples for a living, it's supposed. So one day he sees this caravan of settlers who's heading to west. And suddenly he also longs to head to west. But he is concerned he isn't cut out for survival because he isn't strong or brave like any of the other men he saw. And he doubts, and then he meets his guardian angel, who is a settler. For the sake of history.
Yeah, I wrote that. Yeah, it had a very interesting interpretation of a guardian angel. He was just like a frontiersman.
Guardian angel can look like however you want. It can be a human, it can be a talking dog, or like a fairy.
Sure.
Or it can even be a shark. My sister is convinced that her guardian angel is a shark.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyways, he becomes encouraged because it means that he doesn't have to be like strong or brave, because all that he just has to be himself. So he heads west with his apple seeds, a Bible, and a pot. I could do without the Bible. It was back in the time.
Yeah.
So he gonna start from scratch in the new lands in the west. So he faces the nature's harsh cold and stuff. And he finds actually a nice spot with good soil and close to a river. He prepares his seeds, plants them, tends to them. All the woodland creatures like squirrels, deers, and even a bear is watching him. They're not sure if this is a friend or foe. And I don't know what the animal who comes close to him is called in English.
Skunk?
Okay, it was the same translation. A skunk dares to come closer, but Johnny isn't alarmed and treats it very well, so the other animals comes close to him as well. Like, they becomes his life companions later.
Yes.
But he doesn't stay there, but he everywhere he goes, he plants apple seeds that becomes trees and bears good apples. So the years passes on, decades even, so settlers they pick apples, make delicious desserts and food of them and make feast of it. But he doesn't stop and keeps going, planting his apple seeds everywhere, and even when he's an old man. However, he passes away, but very happy with himself. I found it very cute and adorable.
Yeah.
It's one of the first American legends I heard about.
I got a lot of those frontier legends. They're pretty good. Those are like kind of the last big epic myths of history.
Yeah. I didn't thought much of it, despite I saw this a long time ago, but then I visited Payson in Illinois, who had this settlers picnic in the middle of summer.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
My notes, it was a bit unnerving to see forest replaced with housing and that being depicted as a good thing. Yeah, that was kind of scary. Kind of, that colonial mindset that's kind of makes me shudder a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything scary in that segment.
But in the end, when Johnny's angel comes back and helps him ascend, that was quite heartwarming. Just the angel says, Johnny doesn't want to die, but then the angel says, well, we're a bit short on apple trees up there, and so Johnny's like, all right, we got work to do. That was sweet.
Yeah. Who knows, maybe God also liked apples.
Yeah, I suppose so. Next segment was Little Toot, another Andrews Sisters number about a mischievous young tugboat. Natty?
Yeah. It's a little tugboat. It's very tiny and adorable, but he's extremely mischievous and he causes a lot of trouble, although it's not intentional. And he accidentally causes an accident he is sent at the 12 miles away from the harbors.
Mm-hmm.
The older and other tugboats are very angry at him. So in the middle of a storm, he finds a ship in distress and sends an SOS, but he decides to brave the storm and helps the ship back to the harbor. It's not very long segment, but I liked it.
Yeah, it was cute. I mean, very, very catchy with that great Andrews Sisters harmonizing, and I guess what it introduces into, just the mind grapes of the K&K universe, card forged who are boats. I wonder if Carforged can ever be massive things like ocean liners, I mean, you see big battleships and cruise ships and stuff in the Cars universe, but
I think they can.
Mm-hmm.
They can be different. That dogs and wolves are actually related.
Well, yeah, dogs.
It could
dogs
be
come from
like
wolves,
that, kinda.
Yeah. Something like that, yeah. Then came a segment called Trees. It's a classic poem. You know the one that goes, I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree. The poem was set to music and, of course, animation. Not much to the segment, just some nice animation of nature and wildlife.
As the title says, it's about trees.
Yay, trees.
They grow green leaves. They stand strong in storms, it snows on them, and well, they're lovely to look at. It didn't have an actual plot, but it was more like having a nice poem that turns into a song.
Yeah. And up next was Blame It on the Samba, a reunion of Donald, Jose, and the Araquan bird. Always nice to see Jose again. That was a very pleasant surprise. I thought I'd never see him again in this collection. The premise of the segment is, Donald and Jose are walking along all depressed, and the Araquan cheers them up by inviting them into a cafe and playing some samba music. And in true Caballero style, it then gets trippy. What notes did you have?
Oh yeah, the funny bird, I forgot the name. They cheer them up with some music, which is samba, and they instantly, from being like gray, they coloring, and they begin to happily dance to music. The song number is upbeat, cheerful, and very easy to dance to. It would make even me to dance, and I'm one awful dancer. I guess that is why it's called Blame It on Samba.
Yep. And finally was the Pecos Bill segment, told and sung by Roy Rogers. I do like a good western. I want those motifs in Keys and Kingdoms somewheres. I might have to create like a campaign setting like Dark Sun or something to have a cowboy theme to it. By this point, I was wondering, isn't this the final segment? Didn't the credits say that Bobby Driscoll and Luana Patton were in this? I haven't heard any children's voices. Turns out the segment was framed by some live-action footage of cowboys, played by Rogers and his band, telling the story to some kids, played by Driscoll and Patton. All the characters have the same first names as their actors. So in the Pecos Bill story, we see him being raised by coyotes, which is a good time to bring up sort of the civilization of wildlife and humans being raised in that civilization. It's a common enough trope in fairy tales and Disney that I really wanted to examine it in Keys and Kingdoms. The rules I came up with when first musing about this whole thing are that animals do have a language, but barring the casting of a magic spell to turn you into an animal or give you the ability to speak with animals, which definitely exist in Keys and Kingdoms because they exist in 5th edition, you can't actually learn an animal language unless you were raised by animals with no human contact through your formative years. Think Tarzan or Mowgli. I want to give some races the limited ability to communicate with certain animals. I've already written in the rules that Mishkas can communicate with rodents and merfolk with crustaceans, fish, and whales, but I think in general, to make it possible to replicate stories such as Bambi and The Lion King, I think, all animals can in fact speak with one another to whatever extent is possible with an intelligence score of 2 or 3. The outlandish stories of how certain geographical features came to be, as featured in this segment, stuff like that might actually be true in Keys and Kingdoms. So that's my takeaway from Pecos Bill. Why don't you tell them about it, Nanette?
Oh yeah, it's a story set in the Wild West era of the US with great canyons, cactus, and cowboys. It has a slow, calm melody. The animation are mixed with some live action actors as singing cowboys. They tell the story of Pecos Bill to a couple of children who never heard of it, despite all the cowboys knows the legend about Pecos Bill. So yeah, like you said, it's about this boy who he was lost in the wilderness, raised by coyotes, and became one wild cowboy as adult with a companion horse, which he once saved from vultures. I have to add that the vultures looks totally identical to the ones from Snow White.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they?
Yeah. And he has several adventures like defeating crooks barehanded and fixing a water river in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
One day he falls in love and I actually got bummed out how jealous the horse was.
Mm-hmm.
Enough to be pretty awful.
Yeah. The horse basically murders her. Basically.
Yeah, we don't know what happened to her. He had this harness on a wedding day, this metal thingy, And unfortunately, she tried to ride the horse, but he kept jumping up and down, trying to shake him off. So the metal thingy just becomes bouncy. So she just bounced up and down at great heights, and then she is launched to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Sad actually, because she wasn't actually a bad person.
Yeah.
She was actually a girl who fell in love.
Yeah. But I guess, it had to be a sad story because it's like sort of an origin, sort of a just so story about, why coyotes howl at the moon.
Oh yes, Peko Spiel, he quits as cowboy and returns to the coyotes, and he howls at the moon for his lost bride.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty sad ending.
Yeah.
And to add to that, he would actually caught her with her rope if the damn horse wouldn't stepped on it and being such... I can't even.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking, actually, that the horse sabotaged it like that, basically murdered Sue.
Yeah.
And of course, it's on a lighter note, I just like to point out that coyotes and wolves, they don't actually howl at the moon, they just howl upwards. Sometimes the moon is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And final thoughts on Melody Time?
I liked it. I think I've seen like Melody Time before, but I have actually forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make sense why I recognize some segments. But some segments I forgot, and it was nice to watch them again.
Yeah. For me, it was pleasant enough. I'm starting to get kind of sick of this package era. I need to see some real feature films. Fortunately, we're near the end of this short, sad era brought about by wartime. I don't regret having seen any of these segments, so I guess it's all good.
Yep.
And with that, another podcast comes to a close. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, I didn't spoke much in this.
Nah,
I
you
didn't
just
have
had
much to add.
Nah, you just had your Melody Time notes, and
Yep.
that was good.
Yep.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.